Let's be real. If someone had told me a few years ago that Drake, the artist who seemed practically invincible, could be facing the roughest patch of his career, I would have laughed it off. But here we are, watching one of rap's most prominent icons wrestle with plummeting numbers and public humiliations, all while the competition skyrockets. It feels almost surreal to see him slip, especially if you followed Drake in the larger rap scene for as long as I have, about a decade now. But is this just a temporary stumble, or has the final curtain started to drop on Drake's once bulletproof legacy? We're talking about a guy who set streaming records, dominated the radio, and was never shy about flexing his unstoppable winning streak. Somehow, all of that momentum appears to be evaporating in real time. The critics are louder than ever, the charts aren't as friendly, and fans are either confused, disappointed, or doubling down in denial. Today, we're exploring how Drake's run got to this point, why his latest release, SSS For You, didn't move the needle, and why his rivalry with Kendrick Lamar may be the final straw in a once untouchable dynasty. But don't just take my word for it. If you've been following hip-hop for a while, you can sense that the culture itself has shifted. Some say it's a new renaissance led by artists who bring deeper messages and sharper bars. Others say Drake just lost his magic. Let's dig in and see what really brought Drake from an unstoppable champion to a man on a mission to salvage whatever's left of his legacy. For a long time, Drake was rap's golden child, no question about it. Starting with those early mixtapes, he gave fans a fresh blend of rap and R&B that changed the sound of mainstream hip-hop. Back then, it seemed like the whole world was waiting to see what Drake would do next. From the moment he dropped Thank Me Later, then soared with Take Care, the hype kept reaching new levels. Award shows tripped over themselves to celebrate him. He racked up streams at a pace nobody had seen before. If you were looking at streaming charts around 2014 to 2018, Drake was all over them. It wasn't just the music, though. He was everywhere. Whether it was sold-out arena tours or endless viral clips, Drake knew how to grab and hold attention like he had invented it. No rap conversation was complete without mentioning him, and for good reason. You had the hits, you had the memes, you had a global presence that turned anything he touched into a moment. Even people who didn't consider themselves huge rap fans found themselves rocking out to Hotline Bling or One Dance. In these years, I remember thinking, could anyone knock Drake off his perch? The man seemed unstoppable, cruising from collaboration to collaboration, setting streaming milestones, dominating summer anthems. It was like every other rapper was playing catch-up. But in retrospect, seeds of trouble were there if you looked closely. The formula started to repeat. Each record tried to outdo the last in streaming numbers. But some fans noticed a pattern that no longer felt fresh. Meanwhile, artists like Kendrick Lamar were brewing something more substantial, building a brand on lyricism, conceptual projects, and a depth that critics hailed as the future of hip-hop. Even before this year's fiascos, Drake's armor began showing cracks. At major events like the Grammys, he stopped being the automatic winner he once was. He had a stint of awkward appearances that felt more forced than impactful. Then there was the Super Bowl moment, or lack thereof, that left fans unsure if Drake had lost his touch with those big-time mainstream showings. From inside the hip-hop community, a new kind of chatter cropped up. Sure, he was still a global superstar, but insiders started asking, is Drake just riding old waves? Meanwhile, people were noticing how seamlessly Kendrick Lamar kept raising the bar for rap music. The rumblings that someone else could actually dethrone Drake got louder with each Kendrick release and each new accolade he stacked up. When an artist like Kendrick does something different, like turning an album into a cinematic conceptual journey, it highlights how formulaic Drake's approach can feel by comparison. What made these early warning signs so intriguing was Drake's reaction, or his lack of one. Instead of acknowledging the competition, he seemed to double down on the same style. Fans like me were left wondering if he was simply too secure to notice the shift or too stubborn to adapt. But all of those anxieties became supercharged once SSS For You dropped, blowing the lid off any facade that Drake was still on a flawless path. When you hear that Drake is dropping a new project, it used to be automatic. The charts would bow down, the singles would go #1, and the discussion wouldn't be about whether it was a success, but how big of a success it was. This time, though, SSS For You came and went without making that usual splash. It failed to top the streaming numbers that used to be Drake's calling card. Even more shocking, it didn't spark a single unstoppable single. For a lot of fans, that was unthinkable. A Drake album in the streaming era that doesn't own the charts? Critics were merciless, calling it bland, directionless, and worst of all, forgettable. And from a rap perspective, that's devastating. Hip-hop thrives on moments in conversation. If you're not the talk of the town, your album's lifespan gets cut in half. If people aren't dissecting your lyrics or rushing to post them on social media, your cultural footprint shrinks. It didn't help that Drake snuck in a few subliminal jabs at Kendrick Lamar in the track list. For many people, those lines felt more like petty pot shots than actual bars worthy of somebody battling for the top spot. Rather than boosting Drake's image, they backfired, making him look insecure about Kendrick's ongoing domination. In some ways, SSS For You signaled that Drake's old formula, once guaranteed to break the internet, just couldn't stand up to a new wave of artistry that prizes substance over streams. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, Drake versus Kendrick. This tension isn't new. It's been bubbling ever since Kendrick famously dropped a verse calling out half the rap game by name, pushing his peers to either step up or step aside. Drake's style had been so accepted for so long that suddenly, with Kendrick demanding higher lyrical stakes, fans began comparing the two in a more critical way. The difference in their approaches became more glaring. Kendrick invests heavily in concept albums and potent messages, while Drake focuses on vibes and relatability. That split in styles turned their fan bases into competing factions, one side swearing by Drake's playlist-ready hook, the other praising Kendrick's raw storytelling and multi-layered verse. Over the years, we've seen them trade subtle jabs, but things took a sharper turn recently. On SSS, Drake sprinkled lines that obviously pointed at Kendrick's brand of high-concept rap. The problem? Kendrick's name was hotter than ever, with fans and critics applauding his leaps in creativity. So Drake's attempts to belittle that style only dug him deeper into irrelevancy. When critics heard those bars, they brushed them off. Even longtime Drake supporters had trouble defending them, especially because Kendrick's new releases were surpassing Drake on the charts. And in terms of cultural impact, it was the worst time to start a petty fight because all it did was highlight Drake's slump. Now, you'd think Drake might handle the pressure behind closed doors, plotting a comeback, or working on an innovative project to prove people wrong. Instead, he hit the road on a tour that's been making headlines for all the wrong reasons. Whether it's the bizarre smoking hoodie bits or the forced tough guy routine, fans have been scratching their heads at how awkward Drake's stage presence has become. Social media clips from his shows often gather more memes than praise. The most telling moment happened when a fan in the crowd held up a sign dissing Kendrick. That's when Drake said, "Loud enough for everyone to hear, that's a fact." Now, if you're a big name in hip-hop, you know how easily these things spiral. Usually, artists try to avoid direct jabs unless they're ready to battle it out in the booth. Drake, though, went halfway. He confirmed the diss without dropping an outright diss track. To many fans, it felt like he wanted the satisfaction of trashing Kendrick without risking a lethal lyrical response. But that kind of tactic reads as desperate, like he's searching for any validation that maybe, just maybe, people still think he's top dog. The problem is, even some of his own fans saw it as a weak move. If you want to challenge Kendrick, you better come equipped with more than a quick comment. Otherwise, you end up amplifying the narrative that you're in panic mode. Panic mode is the last place you want to be in a genre that thrives on confidence and authenticity. If you look at Drake's next steps, you can see he's carefully avoiding a direct face-off with the heart of hip-hop culture. Case in point, instead of headlining something like Rolling Loud, he chose to perform multiple nights at Wireless Festival. On the surface, it's still a big event. Wireless is popular, especially in the UK, but it's not the same core environment where artists like Kendrick typically reign. Rolling Loud is known for its raw rap audience, a place where real rap heads show up, expecting no-nonsense performances. If Drake showed up there and tried to do the same shtick from his recent tour, the reception might be brutal. So by opting for Wireless, he can draw a huge crowd, but duck the intense scrutiny of a more purist hip-hop festival. Critics have been calling this a strategic retreat, and they're not entirely wrong. Drake knows he's losing steam in the American rap scene, where Kendrick's presence is strongest, so it makes sense he'd concentrate on audiences overseas that are still more likely to welcome him with open arms. Some fans see this as a sign of desperation, attempting to restore hype by any means necessary. Others think Drake might be pivoting to a broader pop approach, aiming to rely on pop-friendly hits and global tours rather than focusing on lyrical battles at the epicenter of hip-hop. Time will tell if that strategy can truly resurrect his image, or if it'll just signal the final departure from what made him a rap heavyweight in the first place. So, here we are at a crossroads for Drake's career. On the one hand, you've got signs that can't be ignored. A lackluster album, floundering singles, a seemingly misplaced rivalry with Kendrick Lamar, and oddball concert antics that keep overshadowing his music. For a man who once ran the genre, it's painful to witness this public unraveling. As someone who's loved rap for a decade, I can't help but wonder if this is the final act of Drake's time at the top, or if he's planning a comeback that'll silence all of us. Meanwhile, Kendrick is riding high, capturing both the charts and the cultural conversation. But this isn't just about Kendrick. We're seeing a wave of fresh, creative rappers step up. Names like Tyler, the Creator, and others are flourishing in spaces Drake once monopolized. It's becoming clear that the rap fan base, especially in the US, is hungry for something more than Drake's familiar formula. And if the mainstream audience is following that lead, the unstoppable Drake machine may not be able to churn out the same kind of hype it once did. Will Drake adapt, explore riskier sounds, and push boundaries the way Kendrick has? Or will he keep leaning on the same blueprint, hoping the next single magically goes #1 again. Right now, the future is uncertain. One thing's for sure, this moment, where we see the once reigning champ reach an all-time low, is pivotal. If he's got any reinvention left in him, we'll see it soon, or watch him fade into a comfortable legacy act status. From where I'm standing, the bigger question is whether Drake's story serves as a turning point for hip-hop itself. The game is evolving beyond old formulas and demanding more substance, creativity, and authenticity. Kendrick's success is proof of that. And if that's where rap is heading, can Drake catch that wave? Or will he remain stuck in a loop of half-hearted disses and streaming strategies that no longer resonate? At the end of the day, it's the fans who decide. If the culture wants to move on, it will. And no amount of festival headlining or last-minute controversy can change that. But if Drake somehow rises to the challenge, acknowledges what's happening, and delivers something fresh and fearless, we might see a new chapter from him, one that could rival even his best years. So I'll leave you with this thought. If Drake truly wants to reclaim his spot, he has to show the rap world he's still hungry and willing to evolve. With Kendrick blazing the path and a new generation raising the bar, the clock is ticking for the Canadian superstar. Whatever happens next could define not only Drake's legacy, but the future shape of hip-hop itself. Thank you for watching, or in this case, reading. If you've got thoughts on Drake's downward spiral or the Kendrick-fueled changes in rap, I'd love to hear them. Do you think Drake's next move will be a comeback for the ages? Or has this legendary run come to a definite close? Let me know. And as always, stay tapped in to see how this story unfolds. Until next time, keep exploring great music, stay curious, and never forget the power of a game-changing album.